It's really great to be with you. I chuckle. I always like to start with a good chuckle, so I never profess to be an expert in anything. But maybe I have a lot of years under my belt, which gives me that kind of title. I don't know, but it's certainly not one I'm familiar with. It's really great to be with you and be able to have a chance to just have conversations about this. I'll go back a couple of years ago when Lauren and I started to working together, talking about doing different kinds of webinar seminars, or web seminars, we'll call them. And, you know, so we've done a few of these, and I'm going to share with you some links. For those of you that weren't part of that, by the end of the session today, I'll share with you some links, and you can definitely go back and look at some of those other webinars if there's certain topics that related to marketing or commercialization that you'd kind of like to have a look at. Because there were some quite informative topics in that webinar series. But one of the things that was always on our mind was to be able to find ways to really bring the group together, meaning those of you on the call today. Bring people into the conversation. And of course, I don't know about you, but I always find sometimes these web seminars or webinars, they're very broadcast oriented, where someone like me gets on and does all the talking. And we really wanted to try to create this theme of, you know, all about you, which is where the title for the webinar series came from, which was, can we bring the experiences of everyone around the table, if we were kind of sitting like the visual on the screen, and talk about these topics, and talk about topics that are relevant to people who are in the trenches doing this every day. You know, I've been involved, gosh, I'll tell you my career. For those of you that don't know me, I'll tell you a little snapshot of it in just a few minutes. But, you know, needless to say, I've been involved in marketing and commercialization probably my whole career, if you put those broad labels on it. And everyone has a different perspective, everyone has different ideas, and I think, you know, many times people think they know best. Meaning other people. So you get bombarded with a lot of things. And no doubt there's lots of different ways to do marketing. But I think what we want to do is really be able to have conversations about the things that matter to you related to marketing. And so I think it was really a great opportunity when we did the survey and asked you what was on your mind, to be able to really zero in on topics that matter. So I would say that our hope is that this webinar series, the three today, November and December, are a different kind of experience for you, where someone like me isn't talking at you all the time, but more that we're talking together. And really want to encourage you today to take that step to, you know, use the hands up feature, use the opportunity to ask a question in the chat box, or just share an idea. Because as I say, I don't think that there's necessarily one way to do these topics that we're talking about today. I think that we all have our own unique experiences, and that's what we want to try to draw out. So there's going to be lots of discussion and interaction. We have two guest presenters, as Lauren mentioned, that will talk about this topic more from their own experience, and I think that's wonderful, and we're really appreciative to have their involvement. And I'll introduce them in just a moment. But, you know, the key is for all of us to share. And so I think with that in mind, you know, we really want to try to just really move to being able to, you know, dialogue about these things. So, just 1 second. So, I want to first of all thank you for sharing, and thank you for being so open. You gave us a lot of data when Lauren put the survey out. And here's just a little bit, just a snapshot of some of the things when we asked you about, you know, kind of what was on your mind, what was on your to-do list, what were some of the successes and challenges that you were having. And I just want you to take a look at these sets of statements that are on the screen, because this came from you. I didn't alter them, but you'll see the themes when we said what were some of the successes and challenges, what were your goals. And this is what came back to us. Lots of discussion about generating leads, lots of discussion about looking for collaborators, looking for customers, how to increase the number of customers that were licensing technologies out of the lab. And so based upon this type of feedback, I've adjusted the first webinar topic just a bit to focus more on your important issues, which I would just capture as licensing technology. And so we're going to talk about how to identify technologies in the lab. We definitely have a theme for that, but I think we're going to also expand it to talk about how to reach out into the community. And so the topic we tweaked just a little bit, but I think it'll be great. I think it's great to be able to allow us to also address some of the needs that you're seeing here on the screen. And so this first webinar topic, is about identifying technologies that are ready for market. And in other words, how to find collaborators and how to find customers to license technology. And so we're going to look at this from two angles. We're going to look both how to look for collaborators and customers externally and how to look internally. And so, as I mentioned, those of you that want to get more on the topic of how to identify products and assets that you have in your lab, I've got a solution for you too, and I'll share that webinar with you, as I mentioned at the end of the session, so you'll have links to all of that information. So just a little bit about my experience. Before I started WKI, WendyKennedy.com, I spent a lot of years licensing, marketing, and selling technology. In fact, I was in startups. As you can see there, I was a VP of marketing in 7 different startups. And I spent most of my time working on how to identify targets, prospects, customers for our technology to be licensed. So I worked in the arena where we were developing software in some of those companies and hardware in others, but our business model was to license this technology to go inside other people's products. And that was my, if you want to call it that, was my lane, highway. That's what I did. I wasn't a consumer product marketer. I wasn't a finished product marketer. I didn't make or market products to sit on a shelf and get sold. That was a whole other area of business. Many of my friends were in that world. But I was in the world of licensing technology. It's not unlike you, only I happened to be in a company that was licensing this to other companies. And so what I've learned, and again, it's only what I've learned, I wouldn't say it's just, this is the gospel, this is just from my experience, is that this is a relationship business. That's what I learned. Knowing those customers and collaborators and aligning yourself to them is what it's all about. You know, for me, the work that I did in marketing, and many of you, I hear from you talking that you said we don't have a lot of money, we don't have a lot of resources. Neither did I, because I was always in startups, and they never have a lot of money, as you probably know, if you've been talking with them or trying to license technology to them. It's an area where you have to be very creative. But I think it's also very true that licensing technology, it's not like consumer products. You don't have to have big, deep budgets. You have to be just very, very focused, and you have to have a process and you have to have programs that fit the licensee targets that you're going after. So, we'll talk more about these words as we go along, but I want you to rest assured, you don't need big budgets. You do have to be creative, but you don't need a lot of money, and you have to run the right programs for the right types of companies that you're trying to license to. I think the other thing that I've learned about licensing technology is that the product that you sell, meaning what's in your labs, it matters what you have today. In other words, what's there today that's ready, but it also matters what you have that could be there tomorrow. People licensing technology are looking at the future, and they're looking at what do you offer in your lab in terms of capabilities and talent and new and novel features that they would like to be in a relationship with you in order to be able to have access to that. So your products are not just what you have today. Your capabilities are your assets. And it's important to really think about that and spend time to begin to really become very, very clear on what do you offer today and what can you offer tomorrow. And I think the best sales tool that you can have, the best tool to engage with the marketplace is being able to show roadmaps for technologies and just the future, not disclosing a lot of proprietary confidential IP, but showing the vision of where where your SMEs are actually working in terms of shifting a market space that's out there. So please remember that as licensees look for capabilities and they look for talent, they look for new and novel features, and those are all your products that are in your lab. They're not just the physical thing that one scientist or engineer is working on. And remember that they look beyond what you have today. They look at the big picture. And I think from a marketing point of view, that's where I spent a lot of the time and effort when I was looking at what my companies were licensing, was telling the story, not just about what we had today, but why they should have a relationship with us as a source for things for tomorrow. And I think that's a very strategic message that you can deliver to the community, the companies that you want to do business with. So I've kind of labeled this theme today really to be, you can identify technologies that are quote unquote ready for market through what we'll call relationship marketing. And I think that's the message I'd like to share with you, is how to use relationship marketing to identify technologies that are ready for market. Relationships externally with companies and relationships internally with inventors. I think you can practice relationship marketing with both of those audiences, and I think we'll look very closely then at some strategies and techniques for each of these. And I think what's important here when we use this phrase relationship marketing, this came along, this phrase, gosh, quite a while ago, long time ago, and I haven't, in my travels seen it used much in the past, 3, 4, 5 years. But I really think this is what licensing technology is all about. It's about relationship, and I think our speakers will also reinforce this, is that this isn't about a transaction. This isn't about a sale so much, or about a license agreement or a CRADA. This is about a relationship, and out of that relationship with that entity, that company, that inventor, come some things. And I think there's a big difference between, say, relationship marketing and transactional marketing. And I think that relationship marketing doesn't cost a lot of money, but it does take a commitment, and it does take time. And so I've often been known to say, you can have time or you can have money, but you usually don't get both of those together. So, here we're saying you do have to commit yourself and commit time, but I think there's some specific things you can do to actually boost up your marketing efforts if you invest a little time. And I know one of our speakers is going to talk about how you can be creative in getting resources to help you to actually do some of the things that you just might not have resources to do. So I'm just going to pause for a moment. Lauren, do we have our first speaker, our first presenter on the call yet?
Yes, I understand that Debbie should be on. She did have some technical difficulties getting in, but I understand that she is on the phone. Debbie, can you chime in if you can hear us?
Yes, Lauren, thank you. I'm here.
Okay, great.
Okay,
welcome.
Great. Hi, Debbie. Okay, so you're always relieved as a presenter whenever your co-presenter is able to share her story. So welcome, Debbie, and thanks very much for joining us. So everyone, I'd like to introduce you to Debbie Davis. Debbie is the Senior Licensing Associate at Mitre Corp. And Debbie, like you, provided us with some insights in the survey about some of the activities underway at Mitre, about some successes related to the marketing approach that they've been taking. And so Debbie kindly agreed to come on the call today and talk about this in a little bit more detail with everyone. And so Debbie, I'm just going to turn it over to you now and let you take it away.
Okay, thank you very much. So my response to the question that everybody, I think, responded to in the registration form was about defining what your idea of marketing success was. And I said that, in my view, it's increasing awareness in the business community of my organization as a source for valuable leading-edge technologies. And my vision of marketing success is that when people in the local or regional business community think about sources for innovative technologies, they think about Mitre. So if I may, just a few words about Mitre. We're not a federal lab, but Mitre is a manager of federally funded R&D centers, and we manage 7 of those federal government R&D centers. So just like the federal labs, Mitre doesn't build products or engage in any commercial activities, so we want to transfer the results of our research to the private sector so that businesses can develop it into commercial products and services. And our tech transfer office has the same responsibilities as any other tech transfer office. We assess technologies, we sort out the IP protection, we develop transfer strategies, and do marketing and licensing. And we have a very small office, only 3 full-time staff. Wendy or Lauren, do you have the slides? If we could go to, I think we've covered 2, if we could go to 3. So we work at trying to achieve that goal of occupying a place in the heads of people in the high-tech business community. We work at that on an ongoing basis. An important part of that is being accessible to our target market. And for us, that's the high-tech business community. Because of the nature of Mitre's work for the federal government, it's high-tech business community that are the likely users and potential licensees of solutions that are developed at Mitre. So we work at that by being accessible to the community. We go where they are and are present at events that they attend. So I believe it's important to be engaged, to show up at events, and to have a pitch that you can communicate your office's goals or establish a connection with somebody that you have only a brief opportunity to talk with. So the kinds of events that we go to, that we participate in, most of them are based around the local, regional technology ecosystems. So if you think of the ecosystem as including technology providers like Mitre and like all of the federal labs, so this is technology providers, then the entrepreneurs or business people, and then the third sort of leg of that is the funding sources. So there are a lot of trade associations in our area, trade associations specifically for the high-tech business community, organizations that support innovation, startup accelerators, regional economic development agencies, all put on events that we try to attend regularly to stay in touch with the community. We also host events for the community at our facilities, so we make good use. We have some nice facilities in a very good location, kind of right in the center of things in McLean, just outside Washington, D.C. So we make good use of our facilities and have groups in and play host to those communities as well. We also support entrepreneurship in a number of different ways, and the next generation of student entrepreneurs. We participate in a group called I-Corps, the Innovators Corps, that was actually it's a curriculum founded by the National Science Foundation, and they educate technologists and entrepreneurs in how to commercialize technologies. And going back to a statement about using a pitch to when you're in contact with people and to leverage the opportunity where you may only have a few minutes to talk to somebody and try to register the name of your organization with that person. We use pitches, our own staff do, but we've also initiated pitch training for our PIs and technical staff as a tool to help them talk about their projects in a very limited amount of time. If they find themselves with an opportunity to introduce their technology at a conference or someplace where they're presenting a paper or just attending a meeting on the technical topic where they work, they might find themselves with an opportunity to talk to someone, but only a few minutes. So we want them to be armed with a pitch so that they can make use of that opportunity. So it's a big goal, the marketing goal of trying to make the community aware of Mitre as a source for leading edge technologies, but we keep chipping away at the goal, and recognize our small wins. The big wins don't come very often, so we have to keep track of the small ones. And I think this puts us at the last slide. So one of the ways we do this, and this goes back to what Wendy was saying a few minutes ago about this being a relationship business. I'm very much a believer in that approach, and I believe it's very important for us to be known as good people to do business with. That requires consistency, working at building relationships where the other parties, or both parties, have confidence in doing business with each other, a certain amount of trust. I think that requires, or is certainly aided by, the willingness to listen and to think about what the other party needs. So listen when they talk about what their products are, what technologies they're working on, what products they're developing for the future, and try to take that in, and you go back and look at your own portfolio and see what you have that matches that. So you have to put some time yourself into developing these relationships and listening to what the needs are among the sort of customer set that you have out there, and see what you have that can fill those needs. And the relationships with people will, somebody may not have for the most part, they won't have an immediate need for technologies that you have in your portfolio. But if they think of your organization as a source for great technologies, when they do have a need in the future, hopefully they'll think of you and they'll come back and they'll ask. Or you can keep in touch with them periodically and just let them know you have new things, and here's the technology that accomplishes this or that or solves this problem, and you'd love the opportunity to let them know a little more about it. Do they have 30 minutes or 45 minutes that they could spend with you to learn more about it? So when this is done, when this works, you develop relationships that are based on trust and good faith. And I've had past licensees and folks that we've done business with that are very good about referring people over to us to talk to, and very good about telling other people out in the business community about specific technologies that we have that are available. They're often very aware of what else is going on with their competition and in their space, and if they can't use something, they're like as not able to give me a short list of who else might be interested in this, which gives me a lot of good leads to talk to other folks and try to find a licensee for a technology. So another part of all of this is to align the way we work with the way the business community works, and we have made deliberate efforts to adopt customer-friendly licensing practices. We have streamlined agreements. We have a commercial use license agreement that's 5 pages, including signature block. I've seen license agreements that were many times longer than that from other organizations. So that was a deliberate move to streamline the review and negotiation process. Shorter agreement that covers what it needs to cover is much less of a burden for a small company to review and work through. We've also tried to streamline our processes and provide quick responses back to the business community when we have decisions up in the air or questions, information to gather and get back to them. We're committed to providing a quick response back to them. The business moves at a much faster rate, I think, than probably our organizations do as a whole, and their survival is dependent on that. So if they learn that they can get quick responses from you on things that they need to make decisions on, I think that sort of makes the whole thing go much smoother for them. So part of the business-friendly licensing practices that we do, or we adopt specific license terms that include low upfront costs and access to technical staff to support the transfer of a technology. We may have future payments related to company growth. recognizing that the licensee is going to have to make a significant investment in bringing a tech to market, and so we'll stage payments in out years rather than near term, in order to give them time to bring their product to market and start to get some return on investments that they've made. We have a BAS license program that we use for some selected technologies, ones that have been vetted for commercial potential. The BAS licenses are for non-exclusive use, and they have low license fees. We have a downloadable licensing package that contains the agreement and a short questionnaire that will help us qualify the prospective licensee. So I think probably my last thought on this aspect is to try to put yourself in the customer's place and work to find ways to get your technologies out into use.
Okay, great. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I knew that you'd be fabulous, and so those are really, really great points, and I hope that everyone had a chance to really kind of absorb all of those. But not to worry, I have a summary slide. Hopefully, I'll do it justice, Debbie, in summarizing the key takeaways. But you've introduced some really effective approaches, and I think that, what I am going to be doing, folks, at the end of the session today is I'm going to capture, with everyone's input today, kind of a checklist, or kind of like a 10 things. I don't know if there'll be 10 or 12 or 8, but just to try to get us to summarize each of our get-togethers, of our web seminars, so that we have something to take away as a reminder. So let me just see if I can do a little bit of justice. Probably not as nicely as you've done, Debbie, but I'll try. And then I'm going to kind of turn it over to everyone else to really have you just now engage and add yourself any thoughts, any unique approaches that may be going on in your office. And again, not to stress, folks, just to share maybe a little bit how you might add to this list, so that we can create a nice summary. So I think the things that struck with me, of course, I had the opportunity to speak to Debbie, so I was able to capture these themes as she was talking, and so some of these things that really resonate with me, and of course, being from the company side of the table, I can echo much of what Debbie was saying about the importance of these things and the importance of relationship and being available and being responsive. And these are all things that are, maybe you would say, are not marketing, but they are. These are things that matter to your companies, matter to your customers, meeting the community where they are. I think that's a very easy thing to do, but a very powerful thing to do. Being engaged, as Debbie said, being out there and participating in those local events. That's the best marketing you can do to get your technologies out into the marketplace. And even having a pitch, as Debbie talked about, pitching that capability side as opposed to just a single technology, pitching your capabilities. We sometimes in marketing call that more of a corporate type of pitch, but it's the umbrella pitch, if you will, about the capabilities of your lab that cause companies to be intrigued, right, and say, we should consider them next time we have a need. The notion of the ecosystem that Debbie talked about as well, and it's a great way for those of you that are new to marketing, and I know there are several of you on the call, a great way to kind of understand you want to call it the playing field. I know we're in baseball playoffs right now, so if you want to understand the playing field for your technologies, is to really look at the ecosystem, the community of companies and associations and universities, and map it out on a piece of paper to look at the different players that exist in your community. It really helps you to get a lay of the land in terms of the types of companies. You notice Debbie mentioned about focusing on startups and working with tech startups. That may be a very big part of her ecosystem. And in other cases, in other locations with other labs, you may find that you've got large pharma. So ecosystems will be very different depending upon your lab and its capabilities, and also the geography and audience that's in your community. I think it's really encouraging when I hear folks talk, people like Debbie and others, talk about hosting events for the community. I think you don't have to make these elaborate, big events. Inviting companies into your labs in small groups, and however you can do that. Maybe it's a proprietary area you can't go into, but there's other things you can do. And I think just giving them a feel for the technologies and, as I mentioned, the roadmap, the vision, the capabilities, those kinds of events in your labs and bringing people in and hosting them help to really bridge that relationship. And I think there's something I underscored it on the slide here because I really wanted to emphasize a point that Debbie made. This point about participating consistently and over time. I think this is, the foundation for great relationship marketing. It can't be hit every once in a while. The secret, everybody will tell you this, and those of you who've been doing marketing for a while know this. Repetition, right? Make it repeatable, make it memorable. So key is having consistency. You have to be doing these things over a period of time, because they will not get the glue that's needed, and they will not glue you in your lab to the community if you don't have that. So you do have to make that commitment, and that's a key message that I want you to take away today, is you really have to do relationship marketing of the kind that we're talking about. You have to build the foundation by doing it consistently, and meaning doing it many times and over a period of time. And I think, too, the streamlining the agreements and the processes, and I love the idea of the licensing package, Debbie, and being able to let people download that and making it easy for companies to engage, and looking at when revenue will be at a place that the licensee can actually manage from a cash flow point of view to be able to start paying royalties and being sensitive to that customer and the realities that they face. Because if you're going to look at licensing to startups, as Debbie is doing, one of the things that you're going to find is that is a paramount concern for them in getting into any type of a licensing relationship, is that they have very little cash flow at the beginning, and they just don't know why or how they would be able to get into a relationship that's asking them to actually pay that up front. So out of Debbie's talk, when I was sitting here listening to her present, I just jotted down on my notes 3 words that I think really struck a chord with me about this approach to engaging with the external community, and that is reputation. Build a strong reputation. It'll lead to referrals, and be a reliable partner to have a relationship with, meaning doing it consistently over time. So, the 3 R's, not to be confused with the 3 R's that we know about recycling, but reputation, referrals, and reliability. I think those things really speak to the heart of engaging with the community externally. So let me just ask you now, get you involved in, kind of filling in maybe around some of those points that Debbie made, which was, again, Debbie, thank you, an excellent presentation. Lauren, we just want to use the hands up feature. Can we do that here and just ask the group to maybe participate here with their inputs?
Yeah, absolutely. So how this is basically going to work, a lot of you I'm sure have been on these before, but in case, the little hand button is on sort of the left side of your menu. It's a little blue button with a hand in the middle. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is call out each of these, and if you use them to engage with your community, just put your hand up, and I'll give you a minute, and then we'll just repeat that down the line. And if you have anything to add, just feel free to chat in the comments and questions to organizers down at the bottom of your menu. So if you participate in local and regional technology ecosystems, raise your hands. All right, we're seeing people come in about 6, 7, 8,
Good.
9, 10, maybe about 8, 9 people seem to be doing that. We've got, it looks like about 24 of you guys in here today, so that's a pretty good number.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go ahead and put those hands down and ask about volunteering on industry committees. Do any of you do that?
And
Okay,
that's a
great.
great one, folks. Both of them. Maybe I'll just add a little narrative while people are putting up their hands. The ecosystems, I think I mentioned, but the getting involved with the industry committees and coming back to Debbie's point about building relationships with the industry folks. This is a fabulous way to start to expand your relationships. I know that the survey people were asking, how do I add more potential licensees into my kind of my view? How do I build those kinds of connections? And I think this is a great way for you to get out into industry by volunteering and participating with these folks. So, okay, great.
Yeah, so this one a little bit less, like maybe three or so people. 13% of you said that this is something that you do.
The host tech events, you mean?
Yeah, it looks like no, volunteer and industry committees.
Okay.
So next up, we are going to ask about hosting tech events. So if you do that, go ahead and put your hand up. Okay, great. This is looking like a lot of people. Over 20%, 5 or 6 of you are doing that. So that sounds great.
Yeah, and the tech event one, like I say, I think that there's a lot of creative ways, and I've over the years just seen different ones. I remember the Pacific Northwest National Lab comes to mind when they hosted a community event, and they had the inventors as well invite a company to a luncheon at their facilities, and that was a very successful event. I recall them talking about at a session that I attended. So hosting tech events can be, again, a great way to just expand and encouraging your own connections, your relationships with, to expand their reach and bring someone new to expand. Then it, again, expands your web. So, okay.
All right. So then now we're going to look at lab visits. So if you do lab visits, put your hands up.
Good.
All right, great. Almost a third of you.
That's great. That's really great.
Oh, getting to be more than a third. Couple more people raising their hands now. Great. So about
Fantastic.
About a third. Yep.
Fantastic.
And if we'll move on to one-to-one meetings. So if that's something you do, raise your hands.
And I put the one-to-one meetings in there, folks, because something as simple as coffee conversations. Those of us who live on the other side of the fence in the startup world or in the corporate world, getting together over coffee, even, and just having a one-to-one kind of conversation, we shouldn't underestimate the power of that. I think, I'm a big believer in the face-to-face meetings as opposed to exchanging emails and just sending things out much more as what I call passive marketing, where you're sending things out by Twitter and social media and emails and things like that. Nothing builds relationship better than when you can look into the eyes of the person across the table. So it's just good old common sense, but we shouldn't underestimate the power of this.
Yeah, and it looks like about a third, a little over a third of the folks are doing that as a technique. So now, if there's something else that you do, feel free to either raise your hand if you fall into other, or just chat it to us down at the bottom of your webinar menu.
Okay.
So we've got a couple of people. Let's see. Sarah, okay, Sarah Bauer, I think you have something. So if you want, I'm going to go ahead and either I'll unmute you and you can feel free to share that with the group. And in the meantime, we have Jay Duberman saying, send items of interest to the list. So that's another technique. I'll share that with the group in the chat. So Sarah, if you want to share what you do, you're on the line. Feel free to go ahead and let us know.
Is this for the other category?
Yes.
Okay, cool, because I didn't think I raised my hand for that. But I can tell you that a lot of our labs do host, it kind of plays on the host tech events for the community, but they do very specific cluster-focused events, which are more detailed and bring in usually by technology or geographic area to focus on that. We have a water cluster in our Cincinnati laboratory that focuses a lot of their efforts on the surrounding regional states that encompass it. So it's kind of a more concentrated effort as opposed to just a basic open house kind of a tech event.
And I think that's great, Sarah, because I think when you're in that situation, the more focused you can be by your sectors. I think that's a great point, because the industry people will value that they're going to meet. I think Debbie made this point as well about, industry moves very quickly. The startup world moves even more quickly. So if you're going to invite them to attend something, they will see it as very high value if the people who are there are strictly related to their industry or their cluster. So I think if you can make the commitment to do that, I think that's a really great focal point to take, as opposed to just generic technology. I think that people just like to be with others and can get into some very productive meetings, even on a sidebar, with people that perhaps they just haven't met before. So that's a really great thing to do. So. Okay, so are we okay to move forward now, Lauren?
Yeah, I think we should be all set.
Okay, great. Okay, so I just have to get myself off. All right. So what I thought I would do, I mentioned to you at the start of the session that I think process and programs are really important here. And I think because we have some new folks as well on the call today, but I think also for all of us, it's a good reminder just to give you a little bit of a structure here in terms of understanding kind of licensing process, customers now, the licensing customer, and a little bit of a profile of them, and maybe some tools. Those of you who know me know I'm a big tool person. I want to give people tools to take away to do this, so that it's not just a lot of our experience coming through, but more, here's some things you can use. So first of all, I think, if we talk about the profile of a licensing customer, and again, remember, I'm coming from that side of the fence. So in my experience, companies, again, are looking to find new and novel technology that's in their space. Yes, they may come for some feature improvement, but I'm going to tell you, most of the time, when you're talking to a licensing customer, what's going to motivate them to commit to a license will be something new and novel. They have a product roadmap, and I think that's the other thing. They may not share that with you right out of the gate, but they have a product roadmap, and they have time to market pressure. So if they are coming to see you, or if they are expressing interest, chances are they're under some pressure to get something to market. You can, and I think Debbie alluded to this, you can really draw out of them what's on their roadmap, best through conversation. Typically, someone doesn't come and say, let me show you my roadmap, but they have a roadmap, and they have a roadmap that may go out 3-4 years. It'll be very, very specific in years 1 and 2, and it'll be very big box, high points out in years 3 and 4. So a lot of times they want to come and look and see what's in the lab, right? A lot of times they want to come and see what you've got because they want to see what's new and upcoming. They may be trying to fill in what's later on their roadmap in years, I'll just use those years, 3 and 4, or they may be under pressure because something that they need for year 1 has been delayed, and they may be looking for something from you that can help them accelerate their time to market. So keep that in mind. I mean, they have a product roadmap, and when you're talking to a licensing customer or a prospect, you want to get a sense from them about whether, this is a sense for the here and now, whether it's a sense for the future, and just be aware and alert about the pressures. Are there, you're getting some signals that there's some time to market pressure. And their motivation, it's important to think and behave and understand the language of that licensee, and that Are they trying to reduce costs, or are they trying to accelerate revenue? What are the kind of things that they're telling you about, their goals and their interests? And even just in the way what they talk about will give you a lot of hints and clues about what their motivation is. And they do have a criteria. So in a minute I'm going to talk to you about a little bit about, people don't make these decisions alone, but the buying criteria, it's important to figure out what's top of list in terms of their criteria. There may be certain things, and they may be functional things out of the technology, or they may be things related to just giving them a leg up in the marketplace, giving them a little room against their competition. So all the time, these licensing customers are really, looking for that competitive edge. And so it's important to be able to kind of think about the customer and understand kind of the behavior that they have going on in their minds whenever they're talking to you. It's also important to know the decision makers. So licensing decisions, as I said, don't get made in isolation. You may be talking to one person, but there is a group involved in making this decision. And typically it's going to involve the folks that you see on the screen here. The VP of R&D, it will be a VP of product management, there may be architects back in the office where they are, the CFO. So these people are getting involved, and you'll see on the screen, they play different roles. So you may be dealing with someone who is going to initiate this discussion, but there's a whole lot of other people behind the scenes to be aware of, and they all have different motivations and they have different roles. And the point I just really want to make here is the last point, which is, as someone who is bringing technologies out to the marketplace, the important thing is to find a champion, right? So look for the champion and focus on them and know their process. Be able to understand the sales cycle, how decisions get made, and the types of sales tools and materials that will work for each of those stages. I think one of the things that we all underestimate is how much time it takes. And for different customers in your community, different licensing customers, you're going to find that the sales cycle can be quite long. So I think that in terms of the relationship marketing techniques that work for this, I think we've talked about a lot of these. I think the thing to be aware of is that you need to be creative. Lab tours, hosting events, things like this, and really, getting up close with your prospects. Your prospects is really what's important, and the willingness to streamline some of the processes, I think, will make a huge difference. And as I said, a lot of you are getting out into industry and your networking events and bringing your inventors into meetings. These are all great relationship marketing techniques that will pay big dividends. There's only one program that I'm going to share with you to add to your mix that I think can be quite powerful. And that is, I call it a favorite of mine, which is what I call a top 5 next 10 program. And really, it's quite simple. I've used it in almost every company that I have worked for, where we identify the top 5 ideal targets and really look at profiling those target accounts one by one. And the premise is quite simple, is that in licensing technology and building this relationship referral type focus, you really want to zero in on a few key targets. And from those key targets will blossom other relationships and other referrals. Because if you focus on the needs of what we call the top 5 next 10, you have 15 target accounts that you're really building solid relationships with, investing your time, working with them to really, as I said, glue yourself into their product roadmaps almost. And from that, they become your best evangelists in the market. And so, as I say, learning as much as you can about who could be a potential top 5 target for you in your region is really the starting point. And I have always approached licensing this way. It's kind of the mentality of who are the most valued customers that you would like to have as customers licensing out your technology, and really zeroing in on one-to-one marketing programs for those. So I have some worksheets like this that will help you to build some target account profiles using that top 5 next 10 approach. And as I say, at the end I will actually show you where you can go to get these, to download them, to kind of help you start on this path of really identifying the best targets for your technology and how to actually build that relationship program with them. So that's looking at relationship marketing outward to the external community, and lots of things to think about there in terms of techniques and strategies, etc. And thank you again to Debbie. Now we want to turn our attention inward and look at the inside of the lab. And how can we build relationships with inventors and our scientists and engineers, and really how does that help us to identify technologies in the lab? And so our second case study is going to be presented by Rob Sons, who's a technology transfer specialist at the National Cancer Institute. And again, as with Debbie, Rob presented a marketing success story that caught our attention, and so we asked Rob if he would come on and talk about how he's been successful at actually engaging scientists in the lab. So Rob, I think Lauren's going to unmute you now, and we'll be ready to go.
Yep, Rob, you should be ready to speak whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Wendy. Yeah. The case study that I'm going to tell you about essentially formed how I view my job. I'm relatively new in technology transfer, but the experience that I'll tell you about essentially made me fall in love with it. And going forward, it looks as if the lessons that I learned from it in terms of a really relations-focused interaction with scientists and those around me is also valued by my colleagues. So yeah, let me tell you about the very short, brief case study of my experience. Can you go to the next slide?
Oh, sorry.
So I was working as a graduate student with the Office of Technology Development at my doctoral institution to analyze the market for a PI's invention. Just what we're doing here, and essentially like not only think of potential leads, but potential markets before you can contemplate the leads, because it was a very broad scaffold of technology with many potential markets that it could enter. The PI was focused on one application. I went in blank slate, analyzing many different opportunities, and this is the first portion of where the relationship value kind of stuck in my mind, in that regardless of how much I loved the technology and how much I wanted to learn everything I possibly could about it, I can't know every connection that could be made. I cannot predict every possible market. I can't predict every potential roadblock. So just going out and talking to people that were adjacent to the technology gave such good feedback that I could take back to the PI. Hey, this market looks more promising than, for example, the STI, sexually transmitted infection prophylaxis, that you originally thought would be most appropriate for your technology. And those experts' consensus was, hey, we should use this for gut prophylaxis of microbial infection. Yeah, I think that was the main takeaway at the moment, was you never know where value may come from, so just make as many connections as possible. So what was the value to this technology's development? I introduced the PI to potential collaborators. This affected the future direction of their research regarding this technology, and it also modified the licensing discussions the Technology Development Office was having. All positive results that I'm very proud of, and that really made me excited to be part of this field. I think that how I approach inventors today at the National Cancer Institute is that even though they don't own the technology, the government does, I treat them as if they do, because their ownership and that attachment to it allows them to better help me, as opposed to the transactional nature of, here it is, I filled out the invention disclosure statement because I was told that I had to, and leave me alone. I like to dig into the labs. I like to go to lab meetings. I like to interact with the postdocs to find out exactly where technologies are going next. And every time you develop a new relationship, or every time I develop a new relationship, that's another expert that's going to offer up some viewpoint that I didn't previously have. How else can I tell the best marketing story to industry, or determine which ones might be the most interested, if I haven't already soaked up every piece of knowledge I can get from the postdocs or the graduate students on the ground? At the end of the day, yeah, I asked myself, what am I doing to help my inventor beyond just the transactional nature of, hey, we got some patent protection for you, now what? And then to get to time, yes, it takes a lot of time. Next slide, please. It was a lot of work, and the volume of what we do is demanding. Something that I found is something that's called an ambassadors program. It's currently at Colorado State University. They adapted it from the Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation, and it's a program that allows your technology transfer office to have a greater reach, to maintain relationships with the campus that you're incapable of maintaining, because we all have a limited amount of time. How it works is you look for a labor pool that might be interested in technology transfer, and you use them kind of like a physician extender, kind of the same way that a medical doctor uses a physician's assistant or a nurse practitioner. You teach those postdocs how to think about technologies from a commercial perspective, and you use them as technology scouts on the ground. They're already going to all the seminars, they're already going to the symposium, the poster sessions, they're already talking with their colleagues. But they may not be thinking about technologies from the same perspective as us. And some of them really want to think about technologies in that new way. So that's an incentive for them to get some experience and to be part of the process. I've already reached out to 2 postdoctoral communities on the NIH campus, and they've both replied back extremely positively. And there's another incentive for forming relationships. Just reaching out, I got back some new ideas in terms of health and human services programs that one of these postdocs went, hey, maybe I think this would be a good fit for this program, and it provides some funding as well. So yeah, maybe some of you might be able to use this idea similarly. I think that's about all that I have to discuss.
Great. Great, Rob. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And I think that this really does show, the reason I kind of was drawn to Rob's summary is because it really shows a creative approach to engaging with inventors, and I think there's some really valuable takeaways in there. Rob, let's see if I've done justice to a summary for you. I really love this philosophy of relations-focused interactions with inventors. Those of you who know me from my So What, Who Cares, Why You methodology know that that's what that is all about. So, of course, this whole idea of relationship versus transaction with inventors, that it's not just about the disclosure form or about IP protection, that this is about being a support system. Again, I fully recognize that this is requires you to roll up your sleeves. And so the point that Rob made, I might be jumping a little further ahead, but about using ambassadors and finding postdocs and the resource pool, I think that's, again, highlights the need and the value of being creative and finding different ways to approach being able to offer some of these types of relationship-focused programs. I thought it was just a nice reminder to all of us about the importance of being connected to the lab as well and attending the lab meetings and being part, as Rob said, of that scientific community. You know, and just even, you know, the water cooler analogy of being in the lab and connecting with those people and being part of that team. I think that that is, again, might not seem to all of us like that's formal relationship marketing, but man, oh man, it is when you start to look at how do you dig into the lab to determine what might be of interest inside the lab that you could do something with out in the external community. And I think it's a great approach to ask yourself, what gap can you fill, or can you find someone to fill? What do SMEs in your lab need help with? How can you help them? What is the weight on their shoulders that you might be able to help them to lift off? So I think these things are really powerful, yet, you know, again, they're very what I'd call grassroots. I think there was a book written at one point about grassroots marketing. Well, this is grassroots marketing at its best. And let's just take a quick show of hands, Lauren, if we can, just see if people are doing some of these things that Rob's talking about in terms of working internally. So do you want to kind of shepherd that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So just as we did last time, if you do any of these particular things when I call them out, go ahead and raise your hand. So we'll start with being a support for inventors. If you're involved with that, put your hand up.
And that can be in a number of things, in terms of doing some of the due diligence, or just being a support to take some of the, you know, getting closer to them in terms of helping them with their thinking about possibilities for their inventions.
Yeah, and that looks like that's quite common. It's almost half of the group is doing that.
Good.
So if you attend lab meetings, put your hand up.
Don't see as many, right?
All right, no, it looks like about just over a quarter of the group is doing that.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a fabulous one. I think we should all strive. I think that's a great way to connect into the lab.
All right, if you get involved with recognition programs for inventors, put your hand up. Oh, and this is quite high. This is 9 or 10 of you, and getting even higher, maybe pretty close to half.
You see, and this is one, folks, that I would really pick up on as a way to build visibility of your capabilities, is promoting externally as well. Recognition programs and just building, you know, visibility in industry newsletters. You know, they're always looking for things, those industry associations. So getting the word out about what your inventors are doing or any awards that they've won, building up that visibility outside externally. But internally, recognition programs are great too in terms of cross-pollinating and you know, connecting inventors with other inventors. And I just think in terms of helping people to feel valued, that's a big part of you know, I'm going to say the commercialization side of this. How about an ambassador program? Is anyone you know, looking at a program like Rob mentioned?
We've got a couple people. It looks like 2 or 3 others besides Rob. About maybe 15% of the group. So that's smaller, but not really small.
No, that's actually quite good.
Okay, great. So why don't we ask about the next item, connecting experts to your inventors.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, maybe about a quarter to a third of the group is doing that.
Mm-hmm. And I think, again, another opportunity to expand those networks. And remember, going the other way as well, having the inventor connect you to some of the people that they know. And again, that's just expanding that web of the relationship.
All right, and if you do internal pitch events, raise your hand. All right, looks like about a quarter of the folks are doing that.
And I think someone mentioned about the pitch training for the PIs as well as for the inventors. And again, we're going to talk about pitching on the next webinar and really articulating the value proposition for these technologies. I think that this is probably, and I think it was Debbie mentioned, this is probably one of your best sales tools, marketing tools, is helping get the story nailed down about the capabilities and translating that into the value proposition for external audiences. I think that's one of the key things, and we'll definitely dive into that in November. So I think that you'll see, I'm going to put these up. These are two tools that are in the So What, Who Cares, Why You methodology. So you will see these up on the resource site that I've set up on our website for you to download. These are probably two of the most, and again, I'll just maybe preface by saying, in the work that we do with researchers and scientists at the bench level, these are the two tools that they love the most. So if you want to engage your inventors and start to help them explore the possibilities for their research or their new concepts and ideas, I think these are the two most popular tools that can help you broker those conversations with them and explore those possibilities. So I'll put those up there for you to use as tools to engage with inventors. And as I say, we'll maybe just talk about these a little bit whenever we hit next month's session as well. But these are free for your use. So Lauren, we're going to do a little bit of a poll now. So I think coming to the close of the session, I'd like just to ask everyone, if you had to pick one major takeaway from today, what is it? It doesn't have to just be what's on here, so if you want to chat in the chat box, I think please feel free to do that. But I'll let you start the poll, Lauren, so that we can just engage everyone.
Yeah, so we're just going to hit this poll, and you'll get to vote. And I'll give you a minute to do that, and then we'll see the results at the end. And then if you do have other options, chat them to us or put your hand up, and we'll get that discussion going as well.
And I encourage everyone, please do put it in the chat box. If there's one there that we've missed, or if there's another angle that you want to take, we can work on adding it into our checklist at the end for this whole relationship marketing theme.
All right, so we'll just give people a couple more seconds to do the poll. All right, so I think we're going to close out of that, and I'll share the results with you so you can see what people said. So it looks like, yeah. Wendy, if you want to talk about these results, that's probably...
Okay, can people see these results or just me?
Yep, they can see, the results. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Finding creative ways to support your inventors. I really love that people zero in on that, because it really shows that you're focused on your internal customer. And I think that number one may be only at 19, because a lot of you are doing some really great things. And in the third webinar in December, we're going to talk about how to roll up maybe what we call activities that we're doing into programs. And the message I'll have there, we'll talk about how do you actually create programs that make impact. Because I think we're doing a lot of great activities in quote-unquote marketing, but how do we actually make impact through programs? So, but finding creative ways to support inventors and staying focused on that as a key initiative, I think, is a really great starting point or building block for you in terms of your marketing activities. And isn't it true, right? It's making it easy for people to do business with us. I think it doesn't matter whether you're in a government lab or a corporate environment. This has got to be the number one reason why relationships fall apart and business doesn't get done, is it's just the devil of the detail of the processes that sometimes we're asking our customers to jump through. So I'm not surprised that we all see that as an important takeaway. And being out in the community, you know, I think, and I don't know why that one's lower, but I would say I really encourage everyone, if you think you're out in the community now, think about how you can be out in the community more. How can you be, as Debbie called it, that source for leading edge? How can you build that reputation in the community? That's the best marketing investment that you can make. I mean, what you've got happening in your labs is new and novel, and you have an asset there that you can take full advantage of. So think about how you can do more of that, and we'll bump that number up a little bit. And you know, the reputation, referrals, and repeat business come from many of the activities that Rob and Debbie talked about. You know, being a good neighbor, being involved with your ecosystem is what gives you a great reputation, that people think of you when they need you. And I think that's what great marketing is that you're top of mind when the problem arises. And so, you know, that's why I say those 3: reputation, referrals, and repeats come from doing a lot of the relationship activities that we've been talking about today. Okay, so let me just come back here just to close up the session for today.
Yeah, and
so
well, before you go on, we do have a couple of comments. I'm just going to share one with the group from Michael.
Okay.
He really likes the idea of the top 5 targets, and I think we have a hand up from a couple of people. If we have a second to let, I think Michael gave us his comment in the chat, but I think we have a hand up from Connie. So Connie, if you want to share your thoughts, I'm going to go ahead and unmute your line for a second. You should be good to talk if you have something to share. Okay, well, if you feel, oh, there we go. We have a question about where can we find the fishbone and the straw man tool. So Wendy has a link. We'll share that link with you after the session. Everything will be up on her site.
Yeah, and I'll show it to you here in just 2 seconds. And Michael, if you want to talk more about top 5 next 10, feel free to reach out to me and we can have a discussion, and I can share with you maybe some templates that I've used in the past. So I love that you're keen on that, because I think it's a great way for all of us to not be overwhelmed with this whole area of targeted marketing. I mean, we all have enough to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to consolidate a 10 takeaways checklist, and I'll just jump ahead just a couple of slides here. Just bear with me for 1 sec. So this is the link where you will find, it's quite simple, it's wendykennedy.com/FLC. And if you go there, there will be the past webinars that I was mentioning that have a number of marketing topics, and as well these templates that I referred to today in the presentation. There'll be PDFs, and you can just download those as well. And of course, if you're missing anything, just feel free to email me, and I'm happy to help you if there's something else that you were looking for. But before we end today's session, I just want to put a little call out for next month. So on November 17th, I mentioned that we're going to be talking about the quote-unquote pitching technologies. And I always call this articulating the business value of technologies. And really, I'm looking for some of you to kind of throw your hats on the table and be a couple of case studies talking about how you approach this area from your organization's point of view, and just a little bit around the theme of, if you have a pitch event, if you've had some experience working with your inventors to help them get prepared to present technologies or pitch events externally. I don't want to limit you. Just want to put the shout out to say we'd love to have you, just like we did with Debbie and Rob. I'm sure Debbie and Rob will say it wasn't too painful. But you and I will work together just on a conference call, and I'll help you to put together a couple of slides to share with the group like we did today. So if you're interested, please just contact me at my email address on the screen, and that would be great. And we could have, again, a more of an interactive kind of presentation. So that wraps us up for today, folks. I want to thank you very, very much, and thank you again to Debbie Davis and Rob Sons. Very, very great presentations. Always great to have the field, real-world experience come to life in these kinds of seminars. And thank you to all of you. You were great. You all got involved and participated with the hands up in the poll. So thank you again so much. So, okay, Lauren, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Okay, great. Well, thanks everybody. Thank you, Wendy, and thanks everyone who was online with us today. A couple of just last minute things. When the webinar ends, we have a just brief survey, just really short, I believe 7 questions. So if you want to just take that when you leave, just to let us know how we did, that would be very helpful. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that if you were here and participating with us today, we do have a online credit system through credly.com. So you'll be receiving just a little icon that you can share on your LinkedIn or other social networks just for your participation. So you go ahead and keep your eyes out for that. And other than that, thanks again for being with us, and we'll see you again on November 17th.